everybody, and welcome to our first webinar. My name is Katja, and I'm going to be your moderator for the evening. First, let me lead you through some instructions. All participants are muted to avoid interference. If you have any questions about the topic, please write your question in a chat box. You will also have a chance to ask questions yourself at the end of the presentations. Let me just introduce you to the Chamomile Advice, the organizer of this webinar. Chamomile Advice is a Facebook page run by herbal experts, and Chamomile's mission is to educate on herbal medicines. We believe that the usage of herbal medicines should be rational and based on science. This webinar is focused on aloe vera, which most of us surely know and use in our daily life. Even though aloe is used for centuries, there are still a lot of unanswered questions. What are scientific facts and which usages are based on traditional medicine is something that we are going to hear today from Professor Dr. Samo Kreft. Professor Samo Kreft is a full professor at the Faculty of Pharmacy, University of Ljubljana, where he researches medicinal plants and other medicines of natural origin. He also held professional position at the European Medicines Agency in London. Between 2005 and 2019, he was a member of the Committee for Herbal Medicinal Products. He has published more than 100 original scientific papers in renowned scientific journals and over 70 popular professional articles. He is interested in medical plants because they combine research fields of botany, chemistry, ecology, medicine, as well as ethnology and history. He is fascinated by the blurred boundary between the explored and the unexplored, the proven and the traditional, the official and the alternative. Professor Kreft, the word is yours.
Thank you, Katja, for this kind introduction. Let me share my PowerPoint presentation. So you will still be able to see me on the side of the screen if you will want, but most important things will be in PowerPoint presentation. So we will talk about aloe vera, this plant which has a lot of myths around it, but also a lot of research has been done with this plant. So there are many facts about its effects, how it can be used in pharmacy and in cosmetics, in nutrition also. When we hear about aloe, we first think of aloe plant, which is cultivated in pots in the room, like I have here, and like it is on the picture. But aloe for industrial production is cultivated in warm climates, in Africa and in some other warm climates, in big fields, and it can grow much bigger than indoor in our pots. But still, as we will hear later on, for some purposes we need fresh preparations, so it's good to have fresh plant close to our homes, in our rooms, that we can prepare those preparations. But before going to the usage of aloe preparations, let's see some history about aloe. Aloe, long history. Probably it was used already in Stone Age. There are some not very clear indications about that. But Sumerians, for sure, they used it. So Sumerians mentioned it in clay tables. Egyptians used it, and it's mentioned in their scripts. It was called plant of immortality, not because they would consider it to be able to heal all the disease and for people to become immortal, because it was used in funeral ceremonies, so to accompany dead people to the other world. And Nefertiti and Cleopatra, the two queens, used aloe for bathing, for beauty for their skin. During the ancient time, Alexander the Great was a great fan of aloe, and when he conquered large territories around Mediterranean area and broader, and when he arrived to the island Socotra, he established a colony there just to cultivate aloe. So Socotra was the center of aloe cultivation for Alexander the Great. During Roman Empire, the famous Roman physician Dioscorides, in his famous book De Materia Medica, wrote extensively about aloe. So from that time, we already know quite a lot how it was used. Then in the Middle Ages, again, it was used and for many different purposes. And in the Bible, it is also mentioned. In the New Testament, it's mentioned when Nicodemus came to Jesus, and he brought with him quite a lot of myrrh and aloe, so also aloe. Here on the bottom, you can see here in the third row, it's mentioned aloe. This is a copy from the book from the 1578, so very old book. This is Slovenian translation of the Bible into Slovene language. But from different texts, we can assume that the name aloe in that time was probably used for some other plants, because in many cases aloe is mentioned in a way as it was used for perfumes. But aloe, as we know it today, has no special smell. So for this early mentioning of aloe, we cannot be sure whether the name was used for the same plants. But at least from Dioscorides on, from the pharmaceutical properties that Dioscorides mentions in the Roman times, we can be sure that it was the same aloe as we know it today. Let's see something about botany. Aloe, the title of my lecture is Aloe Vera. Aloe vera is one of the species, one of the 200 species. Cape aloe is another name for aloe ferox, because it originates from South Africa. Another species, so here I have aloe vera. I don't have aloe ferox, but I have aloe arborescens. Is another species which was not traditionally very often used, but it's now in last years, maybe last decades, becoming also popular for slightly different purposes. It is advertised as to be able to treat some kinds of cancer, but this is not very investigated thing, so it's more like a sort of alternative medicine. The difference between aloe vera, which we can see here, and aloe arborescens is that aloe arborescens has longer internodes, so the leaves are there is some distance between the leaves, so there is some stem, and aloe vera almost has no stem. Then aloe peril is another one which is used in pharmacy, but I don't have it here. And for ornamental purposes, this is aloe saponaria. but no research was done, all research on Aloe saponaria, and it is also not very often used in pharmacy. But just for you to know that some ornamental aloe are different species, so they're not investigated, and we cannot know whether they contain same active ingredients. So much about botany. Now, before going to the effect, I must say that there are two very different preparations produced from aloe. One is aloe resin, and another is aloe gel. Aloe resin, as you can see here on the picture, is shiny black particles, sometimes also called only aloe, because 100 years ago, if you would go to the pharmacy, to the drugstore, and you would ask whether they have aloe, they would say, of course we have, and they would offer aloe resin. They would not, at least in Europe, they would not consider any other preparations from aloe to be important. So this is the thing, and also the preparation that Dioscorides talked about. So it was used for many thousands years ago. This black shiny resin is produced. We need really big plants, aloe plants. The leaf is cut, and then the juice that comes out from the sap, yellow sap that comes out from plants that are around the veins is collected and then evaporated, concentrated to produce this resin. The only clinically tested efficacy of this resin is a laxative effect. So it can be very effectively used against constipation. In people with constipation, it causes laxative activity, so you don't have such problems. And it contains anthraquinone glycosides, and I will talk a bit more about this later on the next slide. Aloe gel, on the other hand, is produced from the middle part of the leaf. It's more jelly, and it's popular, at least in Europe and in areas where aloe does not grow naturally. It is popular only maybe last 100 years or even less. Before, it was not known in these areas. But people in the areas where aloe grows naturally also used aloe, but this was then not worldwide. I will show you later on how this gel is produced from aloe leaf. It can be squeezed or comminuted from the parenchyma, so from this middle. So what are activities of aloe gel? It's mostly used on skin as emollient, so to prevent irritation of the skin, or when the skin is already irritated, let's say burns, sunburns, it can be used. But also internally, so for on the skin is used externally, but internally also as food supplement. Few spoons per day are advised sometimes, but this type of use, internal use, has no strong effect, so it is not well investigated. So it's again more or less in the field of alternative medicine. And the substances that are present in this gel are polysaccharides. So let's see something about aloe resin. It contains anthraquinone glycosides, so this kind of substances. These are irritating laxatives. That means that they irritate mucosa of our intestine, and so the excretion of water is stimulated. So then the desired laxative effect is achieved, but with irritation. So this is not very pleasant, very gentle for our intestinal mucosa. Very similar type of substances as this aloin A and aloin B, belonging to the group of anthraquinone glycosides. Very similar substances are also in Sena and in Elderbachtorn, Frangula alnus. These are Frangula alnus is a shrub that also grows in most parts of the Europe, so it's in does not need warm areas, warm climates, but Sena also is from the warmer climate. So these two species are more often used when anthraquinone glycosides are desired for laxative activity. But since these are all irritant laxatives, it's more advisable to use some gentle laxatives, so laxatives with polysaccharides. And that would be flax, for instance, or psyllium. So this flax contains polysaccharides, which are then swell with water, increase the volume, and then this achieves laxative effect in more gentle way without irritation. So for aloe resin having only one activity, and this activity also it's not exclusive plant with this activity, and also this activity is not very gentle. So this the same type of activity can be achieved with other medicinal plants as flax, linum, linseed. So that's why aloe resin is not very often advised. But aloe gel is the one that is the reason that aloe is popular and becoming more and more popular. It contains a lot of water, 95%, in some cases even much more than 95% water. And then mucus. Mucus is a mixture of polysaccharides which swell in water that form a gel. And apart from this, also there is salicylic acid, a substance similar to salix, to willow tree. But this salicylic acid here in aloe gel, it's not able to have analgesic properties as in willow tree, but it can have keratolytic activity. So on the skin, it can soften the skin, but the concentration is not very high. Then we have vitamins and minerals, but the concentration of vitamins and minerals is comparable to any other plant material, vegetables, fruit juices. So it's not, this cannot be the reason to use aloe gel because it's, as we will see later on, it's not very easy to produce it. And we also mostly use small amounts of aloe gel if we use it internally. On the other hand, we can eat the whole bowl of salad and we only use a few spoons of aloe gel if we use it. And then another substance in aloe gel that could have some importance for its activity is bradykininase. Bradykininase is an enzyme that disintegrates bradykinin. And bradykinin is, let's call it a hormone in our body, also in our skin, that stimulates inflammation and pain. So this enzyme, if it could arrive deep enough in our body to the place where bradykinin makes this irritant activity, then bradykininase could stop this activity of bradykinin. When we talk about activity of any medicines, also medicinal plants, clinical trials is the type of research that we need to be able to say that if certain product, certain medicinal product or herb is really effective or it's just a myth. So for aloe gel, we have many clinical trials, and I will also only mention one that was made in 2007, and they used a cream that contained 15% of aloe gel. So it was not 100% of aloe gel, but just 15% in the preparation for topical use on the skin. And then they included 30 patients with second-degree burns, so quite serious burns. And all patients with burns on both arms were included, and they were instructed to treat one arm twice a day with this cream with aloe gel, and the other arm with a similar cream, but instead of aloe gel, it contained 1% of silver sulfadiazine. It's a chemical substance that it's used often for treating of burns. So the site with aloe gel was treated without this pharmaceutical substance, silver sulfadiazine. So just aloe. Another side just with silver sulfadiazine. So after 5 days, in aloe side, the area decreased by 50%, and in control side by this sulfadiazine, the decrease was only 5%. And after 10 days, the reduction was already 90% with aloe and only 30% with control. So really, aloe was effective. So what caused the effect? Whether it was salicylic acid, whether it was bradykininase, or maybe just the mucus, this polysaccharide, which preserves water, so to make a wet surface to enable better epithelialization, so curing of burns. So in 2013, 50 patients were included in another studies, again with burns. The inclusion criteria was that the burns covered at least 25% of area of the body, and they did not treat one side of the body with one cream and another with another one, but they divided some 25, half of these 50 patients received ointment with aloe gel, but in this case it was 98% of aloe gel present in the ointment. And again, the remaining half of the patients received ointment with silver sulfadiazine, the same chemical. After 10 days, again, the treatment in aloe group was much better, 56% and only 12% in control. And again, in 20 days, the treatment improved to 92% of the patients and only 28% in control group. So these are the types of study that can be the basis to say that aloe activity is really not just a myth, at least not in these burns, but it does not have to be second-degree burn, but also sunburns or some other irritations caused by some other things, things on the skin. As a pharmacist, I cannot have a lecture without mentioning warnings and side effects. Well, for aloe resin, as I said, its activity, laxative activity is caused by irritation. And this irritation in prolonged use, regular use, can cause potassium imbalance. So the mineral potassium is lost from the body through the intestine if it is stimulated with and especially in cardiac patients, this can lead into dangerous situations. So if there is not enough potassium in the body, because potassium, among other things, has a role in signal transduction for the nerve signals, also to stimulate heartbeat. And in renal disease, so if the kidney do not work properly, then also potassium can be lost there, and with additional loss through the intestine stimulated with aloe, this can also lead into dangerous. By some general precaution, it is also not advised in pregnancy and lactation because of this irritant activity in the lower abdomen. It could cause some side effects to the fetus. Aloe gel, on the other hand, has no known side effects, at least if it does not contain anthraquinone glycosides. Anthraquinone glycosides are present, as I said, in the special channels in the bark of the leaf, in the outer part of the leaf. So if we produce somehow a gel cleanly without anthraquinone glycoside, then no side effects are described. And for topical use, I would not expect side effects also with anthraquinones, because anthraquinones are not that irritant to irritate skin. But for internal use with anthraquinones, similar side effects could appear as in aloe resin. We'll now show you how we can prepare aloe gel at home. I will lower the camera slightly so you will be able to see. Now I hope that on the side, apart from my PowerPoint presentation, you can also see me and my table. And so I will cut the leaf. Already here, you can see the gel is coming out. I will go to the camera. So some really slimy gel is coming out. But it's so slimy that it will not come from the whole leaf. So to prepare, again, we must cut the leaf. We can cut it off in two halves. Or if we are lucky that the upper surface is flat, we can cut just the surface so that there is almost no gel in the upper part. So most of the gel is now in the lower part, and the upper part just has maybe half of a millimeter. I can also stop sharing on my screen. So now maybe I'm not sure whether you can see me now full screen for better view. This just half millimeter of gel, which is on this side, can be already used for treating burns or irritated skin. So it's a very nice filling. It can be also mixed with dye, but it does not mix well with dye. So it's like two phases remain, but just to have some oil also, or just the gel. when this will dry, it won't be very sticky, just slightly. Maybe it will be a bit strange feeling, but not very strange, so it will not cause some irritation itself. So it's against irritation. Now here in the lower part, most of the gel remained, and I can use the spoon to get it out. So here I have the gel, nice gel. The camera. So it's still a tissue, plant tissue, so with cells. So it's not only gel. Gel is coming out. I could cut it, but this, if I put this into the limonade, it would not dissolve. So, but I could put this into a blender, or I can use it just like this for a food supplement. But as I said, this kind of use, oral use, is not very investigated. And according to what we know about the substances that are inside, I do not expect very strong effects. It has some nutritional properties. It has vitamins and minerals. Also, maybe these polysaccharides that I mentioned that are emollient on the skin, so that prevent irritation on the skin. Maybe also inside, they can prevent irritation of our mucosa. These polysaccharides are unlike starch, which is digestible. These polysaccharides are not digestible, so they remain. They can also protect mucosa of our intestine. So it could be there is some plausibility of some effect, but as I said, it's not yet investigated. I will share my screen again just to come to the last slide. To invite you, if you would like to hear to know something more about aloe vera, things that I talked today. I have a book, Aloe Vera, that I wrote. So the chapters are the same, but of course much more that I was able to describe in this short lecture. It can be found here in this book, and the book is available on Amazon or as ebook, as Kindle, or paperback book like this that I have. So that would be all from my side, and you're very welcome to ask any questions.
Okay, thank you, Professor. This was all very informative. Now, okay. Now you can hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat box, or you can just ask them now. You can unmute yourself. Okay, I'm gonna take this as a no. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Professor. Okay, we have one question. What about other external uses?
Apart from treating burns, different burns, different irritations. Well, there is also cosmetic use. So on normal skin to just improve appearance of normal skin. So without treating medicinal conditions. But the mechanism is very similar to the effect that I described. Um, and no other external uses apart from this irritation, burns. Um, so no other uses are investigated. There are some reports about treating psoriasis or treating some infectious disease even, but based on the composition and based on the absence of clinical studies, I cannot tell anything about these other uses. So about the wounds, yes, in wounds also can be used. There was some research on wounds, but on wounds caused by burns. So next degrees burns which already had wounds. Other types of wounds, let's say cuts or other types of wounds are only described in traditional use as experience, but no research was done in other types of wounds. So I'm happy to hear that one of our um, guests has nice experience, and yeah, that would be a hint for some uh, researchers to do proper research um, uh, in this field. So about the wound treatment, the explanation would be most probably keep the wound uh, wet, so to keep humidity and enable epithelialization in this humid area, maybe to prevent some external irritations by covering with these polysaccharides, and maybe by preventing irritation. Irritation also would stop the healing of the wound. About one question is about different species. Well, aloe gel, as far as it was investigated, has different compositions in different aloe species, but the general property to keep water and to prevent irritation is probably very similar in all these species. For aloe arborescens, which is advertised for the cancer treatment, um, there is no known rationale why, how it would work, and what substances in this plant would, in what mechanism it would act against cancer. So the differences between Aloe arborescens and Aloe Vera are not that big to enable this explanation. Did I miss some question?
No, I think that was it. Okay, thank you again. I hope you all enjoyed the webinar and that you learned something new. I would like to thank you very much for your time and attention on behalf of Chamomile Advice, and I wish you a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.